Our brains and our nervous system were never really designed for this level of nonstop stimulation. Every notification, every interruption, the nervous system has to respond to that. When it's happening all day long without much recovery, the nervous system can start to stay in this more chronically activated state. They're more anxious, more irritable, more scattered, or even more tired. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Medicine with Meaning. I'm Dr. Julie Taw, and I'm so glad you're here. Over the past few episodes, we've been talking about the different ways our bodies communicate with us through stress signals, energy shifts, nervous system strain, and emotional overwhelm. Today, I want to explore something we don't talk about nearly enough. Our mental diet. Most people think about diet only in terms of food, but every day we are also consuming information, noise, headlines, notifications, social media, conversations, and emotional energy. And just like food, what we repeatedly consume mentally can either nourish us or dysregulate us. So today we're going to talk about how overstimulation affects the nervous system, why protecting your attention matters for your health, and how small shifts in your environment can create more steadiness and clarity. Let's dive in.
Dr. Julie, so nice to see you again, and I'm happy to have this conversation with you and pick your brain a little bit about this topic that is so relevant to today's world. So I'd like to start by asking you, when you use the phrase mental diet, what does that actually mean?
So when I use the phrase mental diet, I'm really talking about everything we take in mentally and emotionally throughout the day. So not just food, but information, conversations around us, certainly social media, the news, even background noise. Living in New York City, that is ever present for me. What else? I'm also talking about emotional tension, perhaps the pace of life, really all of it. So our nervous systems are constantly taking in signals from the world around us. And just like food, we can either nourish ourselves or it can be depleting. And what we consume mentally can also affect how we feel physically, emotionally, and mentally. I think a lot of people today are trying to heal while living in environments that keep their nervous system in a constant state of input and stimulation. People don't fully realize how much that affects them until they finally experience perhaps a little more quiet or spaciousness.
I guess it's not only what we're aware of, right? But like you mentioned, living in New York, that it's busy and noisy and always something happening. Even if we've learned not pay attention to it consciously, it's input, right? It's there all the time.
Yeah, I think people who live in noisy cities have to kind of learn to tune out some of that noise. But it is ever present. Like, for instance, I was walking in Central Park earlier this morning, and there was the siren going, and then above me was the helicopters, and then there was birds chirping, and it was like, whoa, sensory overload. And I was trying to just tune into the birds chirping. And, that is load on our nervous system. And, if you're aware of it, I think, it can be a bit jarring to hear all of that. But even if it's just in the background, our nervous systems are, picking things up, and it may be unconscious. And it's just, again, the more load you have on your nervous system, just the more strain. And especially when you don't allow for recovery, or, a time where there is no sensory input to just like, whew, um, allow our nervous system to rest or be at ease, or not to be sensing all the time.
And how does all of that affect the nervous system physiologically?
Well, our brains and our nervous system were never really designed for this level of nonstop stimulation. So, every notification, every interruption, or every emotionally charged headline, the nervous system has to respond to that. And one or two things here and there, may not be such a big deal. But when it's happening all day long without much recovery, the nervous system can start to stay in this more chronically activated state. People may feel that they're more anxious, more irritable, more scattered, or even more tired. Or this, tired but wired feeling at the same time. And I think one of the biggest issues is that there's just so little space now for people to just, sit in quiet. And, when you're moving from one form of input, to another form of input all day long without giving the nervous system time to settle or reset, puts us in that sort of sympathetic overload. It's like our nervous system is constantly activated. Maybe not overt fight or flight, but it's like it's on guard or bracing, or just, not at ease.
I was thinking that on top of that, all the information that we're constantly receiving, the noises and everything that you just mentioned, we're loaded on caffeine and sugar, which I think that it just amplifies all of that stimulation, external stimulation, right? And so why do so many people underestimate the impact that digital load, news cycles, and constant notifications can have on mood, sleep, and stress levels?
I think because it's become so normal.
Yeah.
Most people don't even realize how much input they're absorbing in a day, because it's just woven into modern life now. It's like, we don't know how to be without our phones, in our face, or, even standing in line, we got to bring out our phone. It's just ubiquitous. We're constantly checking our phones. And then, certainly social media has become a major input for us. It's funny, I don't even watch television anymore, because I just watch my social media, because it's become entertainment for me. And, the list goes on. So our emails, our texts now, the news, I think, that is something many of us consume to certainly stay current. And then, even podcasts, right? Which I think are a great thing, obviously. But I've noticed that, gosh, I haven't even gone for a walk without listening to something. And maybe I'll try that next time, to just, go out and, just be present, with myself. And so there's just a longer and longer list of input into our minds. And, each thing may be small on its own, but it's just the accumulation of all of it that our nervous system is constantly experiencing. And so many people think they're just tired or distracted or unmotivated when really their nervous system hasn't had enough time to be quiet or recover, from all of that sensory input. And I also think we underestimate how much emotional energy we absorb from what we consume. For instance, for me, I have to be very mindful of my consumption of news. Most of it is just bad news, usually, or news that is worrisome or stresses me out. And so, based on your nervous system, well, I'll talk about myself. Based on my own nervous system, sometimes I need to just put a pause on consuming news because I've already been a little overstimulated or I'm experiencing some personal stress and I just can't take more load onto my nervous system. Um, so, because we live in this 24/7 news cycle or social media constantly going, it creates like this urgency and certainly, fear, comparison. I think
Yeah.
social media, does that to us. And, it just creates a lot of pressure in modern life. And so our body, our nervous system is constantly responding to that too.
Yeah, and I think I've been talking about this with different people because I find it that people are feeling like time is accelerating. Like, oh my gosh, it's already May. Like we're halfway through the year. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with the fact that we're on our phones all the time. Because, like you were saying, if we're waiting in line for something, we get our phones out, and then we just time passes by so fast when you're on your phone. But if you were to wait for 15 minutes in line without looking at anything, you feel like it's eternal. So we've also become impatient to waiting, to commuting. It's like we need to be distracted from time all the time. All the time. Yeah, that's
That,
redundant.
that's a beautiful reflection. Yeah, especially for people in midlife, it's like, whoa, you want to slow life down.
Yeah.
I want to slow life down. Yeah, I don't want to rush through life. And you're so right. When we're constantly, receiving information or, on our phones, we're not present with ourselves, our thoughts. We're also, not pausing, not, uh, the idea of just even being bored, right? But boredom slows down time, I think. And so thank you for sharing that nugget. I definitely feel like time is passing very quickly for me. And you're right, it's already May. And, yeah, there's this idea of just really savoring and, the only way to do that is being in the present moment. And you can't do that when you're on your device or you're consuming information. There's inputting. In order to be present, you really just have to be with yourself. Yeah. That's been on my mind this particular week. Like, my God, time is flying by. And, yeah, in middle age, you really feel that. You just want this second half to be really slow.
And it's interesting because I've spoken to my niece and nephew who are kids, and I asked them, "Do you find it that time is going by fast, or do you feel it like it's slow? Because I remember when I was a kid, for me, time was so slow. Like just a day at school was like a lifetime. Everything happened in one day at school. But I thought they were going to say, oh, it's slow. Because I've heard that time accelerates as your perception of time accelerates as you grow up. But they were saying that no, it's really fast. It's
Hmm.
going really fast for them as well. So my conclusion was that it has to be our devices, because time flies when you're on social media. Time flies where you're watching a video. But if you were to put your phone away and sit down for 15 minutes, it's like people have a hard time meditating for 15 minutes because they feel time. They feel how lengthy 15 minutes are. But if you're on your phone, those 15 minutes pass by so quickly, and their 15 minutes turn into an hour in no time.
That's so interesting. I haven't had a chance to speak to young people and ask that question,
Yeah.
or little kids, but I remember myself, like, you know, time just felt so long as a child, and summers were just like, oh, so nice and long. And now summer is like in a flash, and summer's my favorite time. And so, that's going to be an experiment this summer. How can I slow down time? And it's, probably, yeah, spending less time on my devices. I have more than one device, right? And no, I don't want to like badmouth technology and our, amazing smartphones. They're amazing tools that have really, been so useful, but it is, a distraction, and and it's entertainment, and it's everything in one, little device, and you want to consume it mindfully, just like we talk about mindful eating, um, and, eating in a way that nourishes us. Definitely, we want to be mindful about our attention. I mean, mindfulness is really about our attention, but
Yeah.
we want to, um, consume. Well, let me back up. We want to place our attention in a mindful way, and, allow in, whatever information or, sound or noise mindfully. I mean, I guess in New York City, I can't always control that, but I can certainly, control my time on my devices.
Mhm. Yeah. It's about choosing, right? It's about choosing being aware
Mm.
and choosing what is helpful, what is healthy, what is helping you. Because you mentioned eating, and I feel like it's the same way. If you're not mindful, like food is a neutral thing, and we need it. But if you don't really choose consciously what you want to eat, how you want to nurture your body, you can go to an extreme that it's harmful to your health.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's certainly, mindless eating, right? Like you just
Mhm.
kind of, it's automatic, you're not really thinking about it, and that can be harmful. And so it's a good analogy. And I love that word about choice.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes I feel for myself, like I definitely feel addicted at times. And full disclosure, where like it just draws me in, and then, an hour has gone by, and it's just, so frustrating. I get frustrated myself. Like, why did I do that so unconsciously?
Mm.
And I think that's the thing. You just want to be more conscious about it. Like, okay, I am going to spend 15 minutes on my device doing, whatever X or Y. And there you have choice. And so you have to bring your consciousness and intention to it.
Mm.
But I think so many of us, I'll just speak for myself, that there are times where I get unconscious about it. I just kind of like get on my device, don't set a timer or just let it control me. Then it almost feels like I'm not making a choice. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, I want more choice around it.
You mentioned something really interesting. Now that we're speaking about this, I realize that it's a very good way to practice mindfulness for those who have a hard time meditating or who don't know how to practice their mindfulness. Maybe in this area, in how we consume or how we take in information or how we use our devices, we can practice mindfulness. I was thinking as you were speaking that sometimes I'll go and look for something on TikTok. Like I have something in mind that I want to look for, maybe a recipe. I don't know, whatever it is. And then I know that I'm looking for a specific thing, but then I realize I don't know how long it's been that I'm like looking at something else completely. You know, you started looking at a recipe and all of a sudden you're just, I don't know, learning about what's happening with the birds in Peru. And you don't even realize how you got there. So
Yeah.
that's the part where it's so easy. It's so tricky. It's just designed to take you to many places. So just being aware of like, this is what I want to do and focus on that, right? If, or sometimes you can say it like you mentioned a timer, right? Oh, I'm going to set up a timer just to dive deep into whatever comes up in social media. But I know that I have this time for entertainment and that's it.
Yeah, it's good you mentioned that because I think that happens to all of us. It's like this little, wormhole we go down, and
Right.
it's almost, um, yeah, you just get lost in it, and it's fun and it's entertaining. I guess that's what the algorithm is about. It just kind of feeds you things that it knows that you have interest in, and it is sometimes literally, hard to stop. Um, and I love what you said about, really being present so that you don't get sucked up into the algorithm and say, I came here just to do this and I now have what I looked for and I'm going to stop. And, really almost have to like be super present. Otherwise you're just going to be taken for the ride. And it's a fun ride, right? So it's hard to stop. Yeah, that's definitely happened to me for sure.
Yeah. And just before I ask you the next question, because I always like to know about your personal experience. I want to say that it kind of happens to me when I go down to the kitchen as well. Sometimes I need to get something from the kitchen, or I just want to drink water, and then I find myself eating all the dates or something. So it's like that wasn't what I was coming for, but I've lost my focus and just started doing something else automatically. So I think that translates as well.
Yeah, well, I think it's partly due to the fact that we have become easily distractible, that, or, we just have so much in our brain at one time that it's hard to focus on the task at hand. And that's what we're talking about today is, when you have that mental overload, you lose your focus.
Mm. And
And,
so,
Mhm.
oh no, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's good that you're bringing it up. That happens to me frequently. And, sometimes you're just worried, oh my gosh, is it, my middle-aged brain? But it's good to know it happens in young brains as well. And, it's something to think about. Like, are we all becoming just a bit absent-minded,
Mm,
where we're just not fully present with ourselves and we're all kind of losing our attention.
yeah. Wow. This is a bit deeper, but what came up to me is like, what are we trying to avoid? But I guess that's a different
Oh,
question.
well, yeah. Yeah, it's it's a form of escape,
Mm,
it's a distraction. It's like when you were talking about how you would just go from kind of um I imagine you're watching your reels or, you're on your TikTok and just going from one place to another. And all of a sudden it's like, well, how did I get here? And there's just like so many shiny objects, and it's just, it's too exciting for our brains, and, yeah, I think that is, a good point to make, and that it's hard to sit with ourselves now more than ever. It always, I think, is hard for us as humans to sit with ourselves and our thoughts. And, we've become even further removed from that. But that's a disconnection that we don't want to, well, I'll just say for myself, that is a form of disconnection. And, I want to be fully present and I want to be mindful. And, yeah, it does bring up a deeper question, right? And that's why it's so seductive,
Mm.
because it's so entertaining, so many shiny objects, and then we're distracted from ourselves.
Yeah, I wonder if we're losing our capacity to go and seek that thrill in life, like outside of our screens, just because it's become so easy to get that same effect just through watching something through a screen. Like now you can experience life through a screen that we don't feel the need to go out and make a friend, have a conversation, get to know someone, go look at the trees or learn something new outside with people just because it's become so available to us and so
Yeah.
quick as well. You have to go and, commute or
Yeah, no, it certainly takes a lot more effort now to do those things, that in real life things. And you can get really comfortable, sitting at home with your screen and still be entertained, but that's not a full and rich life if you want to be fully human, right? Interacting with others and feeling that connection in real life. It does take more effort.
and you've mentioned how this affects you as well. You've shared with us, but was there a specific time in your own life when you realized your environment or information intake was affecting your nervous system more than you initially recognized?
Yes, absolutely. Last week. Yeah, no, this is a tough one for me. It is ever present, and it's something that even this conversation is so helpful for me to re-examine my consumption, and just, sensory overload and, constant input into my brain. Um, yeah, I mean, I just noticed like last week, I had a stressful, busy week, and I was just, kind of wanting to rest and relax. And so what did I do? I laid on my couch and just opened up Instagram because it just felt kind of soothing and relaxing. Like, oh my God, no, that's, not what I want to do to decompress. I mean, if you can curate your social media in a way that, it just feeds you just reels and posts that are just going to be really calming to your nervous system, then wonderful, but I don't know how to do that for my Instagram. Maybe some people know how to do that. Um, so yeah, this is a real work in progress for me. Many things are still a work in progress, but this one in particular. And, what I did notice was that it didn't really calm my nervous system. It just kind of tuned me out, numbed me out for a little bit. And sometimes that is useful. But what I really should have done was just maybe take a nap or just kind of, lie there and take some deep breaths, and just settle my nervous system. And, I think as high functioning people, we just get used to, constantly being in that mental engagement. And so I didn't really know how to just turn off for a moment. And, I think it's really important to recognize that if we want to heal and we want to calm our nervous system, sometimes we need to create more space for that. And that
Mm.
may mean more silence, more presence, and less stimulation of our nervous system, and allow it to really rest and not be constantly reacting. So when I'm on the Instagram, most of the time, it is, and no hate on Instagram, by the way, but that it is just constant input that I'm reacting to. And, sometimes it's best to just allow our nervous system to not react. And that is relaxation, right? Like you don't have to actively do a meditation or a breath work to induce the relaxation response, but just to not input, into your nervous system.
Yeah, I was gonna say that no hate to Instagram or anything by any means. Like I wouldn't want a world without these things either.
Yeah.
They're helpful. They have so many good things to offer, and they definitely push to progress in so many ways. The thing here is doing things without our awareness, or just allowing time in life to pass us by without presence, because they can remove us from the world, from our awareness of our bodies and of our relations so quickly if you don't pay attention. But I think that it can happen with anything else as well. It's not just technology, but right now, this is our biggest challenge because it's at hand. So it's really about learning to how to live with these things, learning how to use these things in a way that doesn't take us away, in a way that doesn't absorb us, so that we can continue to live life more interactively, outside of our screens, to actually feel the ground, walk, talk to other people, and in real life, and listen to music in real life or whatever it is, right? That part.
Yeah. And I love how you put that. It is certainly so important for us to do all the things that make us feel alive and
Mm.
human. And in the past, we didn't have to work so hard at it. And I think all the two of us are saying is that you want to be conscious and aware of your consumption of, all the media that we can
Mm.
get access to on our phone, um, and that you have control over it. And anything that you don't have control over, then, can become an addiction, right?
Mm.
That's sort of the definition of addiction is when, this is a very lay version of the lay definition of addiction is that you've lost control over it, you're constantly seeking to have it. So, it can be like all those other things that are more classic addictions. Um, so just bringing that up, bringing up the fact that this can be similar, form of addiction when it's not in your conscious control. And it's so much more subtle because it doesn't feel harmful. It's not like alcohol or drugs, but it can disconnect us from ourselves, and it takes us away from doing all the other things that would, really add to, interacting with other humans in the way that we've done for, millennia.
Mm. And you mentioned that it's subtle, so it's easier to let it pass by because we're all kind of consumed in it. We're all exposed to it. It's just kind of hard to recognize when it has become harmful. Um, which brings me to this next question: how do you see that in your practice, in your clinical work? how can you know whether a person's nervous system is being dysregulated by their overstimulation or lack of mental rest?
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot throughout the episodes, how symptoms can show up when there is nervous system dysregulation. So, we've talked about how, you can get sleep issues, anxiety, fatigue, brain fog, irritability, feeling emotionally depleted. Oh, digestive symptoms. So these are all symptoms that can be due to nervous system dysregulation. And so then you'd have to ask, well, why is my nervous system dysregulated? And it could be that there's a lot of stressors in your life. That's the most obvious. It could be that, you're not balancing with, uh, support for your nervous system, through exercises like breath work or meditation, that kind of helps to balance the nervous system. And so you have to do a little bit of detective work. Is your device contributing to keeping your nervous system dysregulated or unbalanced? And, that takes a lot of kind of inward looking. I'll be honest, it hasn't come up in, my, medical visits overtly. And now I'm going to perhaps look for it more. But we do talk about the consumption of news, for instance, where, that's pretty obvious to most people, where, when there's troubling news or stressful news, people can articulate that, oh my God, I'm just feeling overwhelmed by all bad news around me lately. So that's obvious. And we talk about how, gosh, that is contributing to stressing your nervous system, and how can you be more mindful about consuming news? Or sometimes you need to take a little hiatus just to rest your nervous system from all that input. I think, in children, we're very conscious as parents of how much kids are on their devices, but we haven't really talked about it for adults. And so, I'm sure pediatricians screen for that in their history taking, when they, talk to parents, but, it's not something that I have, asked my patients about, and going forward, I think I will. And so conversations like this, I think, help us to be more thoughtful and mindful about, how much we're on our phones. So my point here is, we're very aware of how it impacts children, but I think we also need to be aware of how it impacts, adults. And so you really got to, check in with yourself. Are you feeling good about the amount of time you're on your phone? And if the answer is no, well, then you should kind of look into that further and, see where there may be room for change.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it that many times I'm really tired, and I don't think that I've done enough physical activity, or sometimes I'm like, I didn't do much. Why am I so tired? Like, I worked and then I just can't do anything anymore. And I realize I was on my phone. I didn't rest. Like, I worked and then I wanted to decompress, and then I just spent a lot of time on my phone, and then all of a sudden I'm mentally exhausted. And I think that many people feel like that. Why do you think cognitive and emotional overload create such profound fatigue?
Well, that's because mental and emotional load takes a tremendous amount of energy. And a lot of people are carrying, it's like, open tabs, mentally and all day long. The open tabs you have on your computer. So, you're constantly planning, remembering, anticipating, responding, making decisions, managing emotions. All of this, takes energy. So even though, you're maybe not doing something physical all day, your nervous system may still be working very hard. So I also think, emotional vigilance, worrying about something or, thinking about, um, the pain of others, especially someone close in your life, is exhausting. You're trying to hold everything together, absorbing stress from the environment around you. I think, as a mother, that one's very dear to me, just like my children's stress becomes my stress. And, I feel it in my physical body. And so, all of this takes energy, almost, like you do a physical workout. So people don't recognize that, it takes energy to support our nervous system and allow it to function. But also, just, energetically on an emotional level, it weighs us down. So that, can cause low energy. So people often think, why am I so tired? I didn't even do that much today. But mentally and emotionally, their system may have been running nonstop all day long. You're just not aware of it.
Yeah, and if you think about it, how much of that energy that is being consumed by mindless scrolling or by mindless input could be used to something that serves you more,
Yes.
right? That's a good question. Like, what have you stopped doing, or what have you procrastinated on that you've wanted to do?
Yeah, and that causes more mental load, right? When you procrastinate, it's like, yeah, I think, part of it is the mental stimulation, right? But probably most of it is that it takes away from other activities that may have, helped you to really unwind or to, there's a saying, fill your cup, right? To replenish or connect with another human. I was just thinking, it's kind of like, when I was young, television was like the equivalent, like it kind of like took away your time and, it didn't always, it just took away your time, right? But I was just thinking, at least with television, you're watching with your family. But I think with our devices, it's just for you and it's very isolating. And I notice that sometimes just in my own home, like we're all sitting together in the living room, but we all have our own devices and we're not interacting. Whereas if we're watching television together, we can make comments or talk about it, or at least, we're all focused on the same thing. And so that isolation is also just not healthy for us. But yeah, I think it takes away from other activities that can be more nourishing.
Mm, yeah. If you're watching television with your family, like you mentioned, you're sharing an experience because
That's right.
everyone, you're having the same input. So you're kind of sharing the same experience. But when you're on your phone, it's like you're tuning out. I'll just leave my body sitting here and everyone just leaves their body sitting together, but they're like each person is on a different channel in a different dimension. And it's not common that you share because a lot of things are not even that impactful. So it's not common that you would share about what you're looking at, unless it's like an important news or a really funny meme or something really interesting, but most of it is just whatever, a lot of the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Though I'll have to say it's been kind of fun to send things to my son.
Yeah. Well,
And it's a
that's
little way for us to interact and share some common interests. But talking would be better. um, yeah, usually it's short form content. So it just kind of goes by quickly. Whereas, like if you're watching a movie or even like an episode on television together, it gives you the opportunity to talk about it afterwards, because you had that shared experience. Yeah, it's, can be isolating when you're on your own channel.
though I like that you mentioned a positive aspect of it. I do like to send my friends. I really enjoy watching a funny video that reminds me of someone and that I know that it's going to cost them a laugh, a big, laughter, because I find it that that's a way we connect. I see this video that resembles our relationship and then I send it over and I know that when they look at it, they'll be like, ha, ha. So you actually did provoke a good moment for someone else and a moment of connection even within the distance. So,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
and that's what it is. It's social media, right? And so it's meant to
Mm,
be interactive and there is connection there and there's value to that too, right? But I think what we're talking about is just that mindless consumption where you're not interacting with anybody, and that can be harmful when it's when it's not conscious and not in your control.
I love it. It's just leaving us with the question of, is your social media connecting you? Is it
Hmm.
social or is it isolating you? You can
Yeah.
ask yourself that question, right? And if it's isolating you, then okay, then it's not giving you the best part of it. Right? And we talk about the well-being ecosystem on every episode. So I'd like to know how protecting attention and creating supportive environments become a part of the well-being ecosystem or our well-being in general.
Yeah, I think this is such an important part of the well-being ecosystem. As we talk about a lot, our nervous systems are constantly responding to our environment, the pace of life, the amount of noise and input, our schedules, the emotional tone around us, even how much pressure or urgency we're carrying. This is all part of our environment, which is one of the pillars of the well-being ecosystem. So protecting attention isn't about, being rigid or perfectly disciplined. It's about creating conditions that help the nervous system feel safer, steadier, and less overloaded. And when we tend to, that part of our ecosystem, our environment, then it allows for a healthier shift in our ecosystem. And, it's one that I think isn't top and center on our minds, like perhaps we think about food and movement and, all of those lifestyle activities that are important for our health. This one is much subtler, but, we feel it and our nervous system notices it. So, the environmental pillar is very important in the well-being ecosystem.
And well, we do live in this world, and like you said, it's subtle, but it's subtle because it is a part of our life. We carry a cell phone everywhere we go. We work on our computers. So, what are some realistic ways people can begin improving their mental diet without completely disconnecting from modern life?
Yes, that's really important. I think it's really important that this doesn't become another, perfectionist wellness
Mm,
project, right? That, okay, everybody go on a digital detox, which yes, that would be great, but I've never done it myself, so I'm not going to ask anybody to do it. People who go without their phones for a weekend or longer. So the goal isn't to eliminate technology or disconnect from, the media completely. It's really about helping the nervous system experience a little more spaciousness and recovery. So it may start with something very small. For instance, not checking your phone immediately when you wake up. Give it a little bit of time. Turning off unnecessary notifications. I think, this is a good one. That constant pinging is so distracting, and it's just like too tempting to look, right? So just turn off notifications. I mentioned this one earlier, taking a walk without listening to something. That's something I'm going to start trying. What else? Maybe it's just giving yourself a few quiet minutes between tasks instead of, filling every moment with some input. Or, I know, standing in line without looking at your phone. So I encourage people to just notice how certain type of content make them feel. There may be some things that leave us feeling grounded and connected, or other things that leave us feeling more depleted, anxious, or emotionally flooded. And so you just want to be more intentional about, what we allow in to our mind, our thoughts, and this alone can make a big difference.
And so for someone listening today, just to close off, who may be feeling mentally overstimulated or emotionally overloaded, what is one gentle shift they could make this week to feel better?
Yeah, I would say start very gently. Never helps when we demand drastic changes of ourselves.
Mm.
So this week, notice one small moment each day when you could choose a little less input. Maybe you sit quietly for a minute before reaching for your phone. Maybe you drive without listening to anything. You don't have to change your entire life overnight. It's these small moments of quiet and spaciousness that can really matter more than people realize. For sure, your nervous system will notice. And often it's those small moments when people begin feeling more present, more connected to themselves, and a little more steady again, that can make bigger changes, right? So when you notice these small moments, it's like, oh, it's almost like a remembering. This moment of quiet feels good. Let me have more of that. So starting with small moments can be impactful is what I'm saying. So, don't start big. I think that's always been my message, is to start gently, start with small, doable moments, and just inviting presence, inviting quiet, inviting peace.
Thank you, Dr. Julie. I think what's always very refreshing to me about having a conversation with you is that it all starts with awareness. And then
Yeah.
from there we can move on to little things, and little things compound and make it more sustainable over time. And I like that gentleness about you, that, there's so much pressure on anything, even on being healthy, that, when you have the permission to just become aware and tune into yourself and start slowly and kind of find your own way. I feel like that alone, it's more calming. It's about learning to approach our health in that way, and that's what I'm always left with when I talk to you, no matter what we're speaking of. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for reflecting and noting that. That is my style, and I hope it resonates. Well, if today's conversation resonated with you and you've been realizing how much your environment and mental inputs may be affecting your nervous system, I actually created a resource to help you begin resetting more intentionally. You can visit my latest post on Instagram at julietaw.md and comment the word reset, and I'll share the guide with you there. And if you prefer, you can also find the link directly in the show notes. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Medicine with Meaning. Your nervous system is constantly responding to the environment around you. And sometimes protecting your health begins not by adding more, but by creating more space, more quiet, and more intentionality in what you allow in. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who may need it. And I'll see you next time.